Good morning, seniors. If you're not in class today because of the PSAT, no worries. You got these notes in class or you're getting them right now. This is homework. You should be on page 366 of your textbook, and you should be on page 2 of your notes packet. We're talking about the framers' plan to elect a president, which is awfully timely considering what's happening. Today is the first day of early voting here in Tennessee, so make sure you get out there and vote. All right, so here's what we've got. Alexander Hamilton came up with the plan for electing the president. When the framers came up with the idea and put Electoral College in the Constitution, they weren't 100% sure what the Electoral College was going to look like. So they gave the plan to Alexander Hamilton. They gave him the job of putting it together. So you will see this on page 366 and in the notes. All right, number 1, presidential electors. It says each state has as many electors as senators and representatives. So Tennessee has 11 electors because we have 2 senators and 9 representatives. The numbers are not just random. 2 senators plus however many representatives. When you get back into class, take a look at California. Their number is 55 because they have 2 senators and 53 representatives. All right, this is part of the original plan that we still use. It's important for me to point out that there are parts of this original plan that we no longer use, that they just don't work. All right, number 2, it says electors will be chosen in each state by the state legislator. Electors are those people that make up the Electoral College. They are well-informed citizens who are going to choose the best person for the presidency. The state legislature will look around the state of Tennessee and look for 11 Tennessee electors. Okay, it doesn't say they've got to be white, black, yellow, green, red. Doesn't say anything about what gender. But they need to look around for, in our case, 11 electors to serve in the Electoral College representing the United States. They should be informed citizens who will choose the best person for president. Third part of Alexander Hamilton's plan, it says electors meeting in their own state would cast 2 votes, each for a different person for president. Now think about this. This part doesn't work anymore. Let's say I'm an elector. I go to Nashville, Tennessee. I cast 2 votes, each for a different person for president. I cast 1 for Hillary Clinton and 1 for Donald Trump. If I do that, if all the 11 electors in Tennessee, if all of the electors all over the country do that, what's going to happen? There's going to be a tie, and it's not going to work. So this part has had to change, but we're going to write it down because this was part of the original plan. So I go to Nashville and I vote. We send those votes then, number 4, we send them to Washington, D.C., where the votes are counted before a joint session of Congress. Joint session means you've got people from the House and the Senate there. Joint session of Congress means you've got the House and the Senate together, and they count the votes. The way it used to work, number 5 says the person receiving the most votes becomes president. That makes sense. Check this out, though. It used to be the person with the second highest number of votes became vice president. Imagine for a second. Hillary gets the most votes. She becomes president. Donald Trump becomes her vice president? I don't think so. Flip it around. Donald Trump gets the most votes. He becomes president. Hillary gets the second highest number of votes. She becomes his vice president. Again, doesn't work real well. They've changed that. You could understand, I hope, that early in our history that presidents and vice presidents did not always get along. They had just run a campaign against each other, not necessarily best of friends. If a tie occurs in the Electoral College, or if nobody receives a majority of votes, the president is then chosen by the House of Representatives. This is still true today. If nobody gets a majority of the votes, or if a tie occurs, then it's completely out of our hands as American citizens. The House of Representatives would vote, and they can vote however they want. They don't have to be swayed by public opinion. They can vote however they want. Similarly, number 7, if a tie occurs for the second spot for that vice presidential office, the vice president will then be chosen by the Senate. Okay, again, it's out of the hands of the U.S. citizens. The Senate, our 100 senators, would choose. Now, this original version only worked for George Washington. Okay, after that, it became pretty obvious that certain things would need to change. The original version only worked to choose George Washington as our president. A lot of this presidential stuff we've seen. This is a great time to teach government. You've paid attention maybe to the primaries. Maybe you paid attention to the nominating process. We've talked about conventions before. The trick here is that when it comes to nominating a president, the Constitution gives no instruction. Remember, the Constitution and the Founding Fathers did not like the idea of political parties, and they didn't mention them. They also didn't mention nominating a president. The Constitution gives no instruction. There are no federal laws about nominating. The only federal laws that are out there concern finance and how much a person can donate. States have very few laws. And so because of this, with these complications of having no guidance, each political party determines how a candidate is nominated. The Democrats do it one way, the Republicans do it another. They're both right. They both work. They're not violating any laws or rules because there are no laws and rules. Before fall break, we talked about conventions, presidential and party conventions. If you have a president who wants to run again, 4 years ago, Barack Obama wanted to run again. Those folks usually get their party support. Remember, the vocabulary word is incumbent. Incumbent is the current office holder. So if you had a current office holder here locally, Mayor Stan Joyner, he's our mayor, he's the incumbent. He wants to run again. He wants to be elected again. Anyway, most presidents who are sitting presidents, who are incumbent presidents that want to run again, will usually get their party's support. We had a pretty interesting presidential primary season. Each state got to look at a whole list of all the Republicans or all the Democrats and try to figure out which one they preferred. Again, we've talked about primaries before fall break. Presidential primaries are held for a couple different reasons. One, they can determine the voters' preference among candidates. At one point, there were several Republican candidates, and you looked at that ballot of just Republicans, and you said, of all these folks, this is the one I prefer, and you vote for them. Each state voted for different people. Donald Trump obviously won lots of Republican state primaries. Based on what the people of Tennessee, or whatever your state happens to be, based on what the people prefer in terms of their candidate, that helps the delegates get selected to go to the convention. We had Tennessee delegates go, and they made sure that our wishes were known. They said, look, of all the different people running for president in this Republican primary, here's who we prefer. National conventions usually last 3 to 4 days, sometimes longer. National conventions are a big deal. We've talked about this too in passing. The political party rents out a big football field stadium type thing. Quicken Loans Arena is where the Republicans met this year. The main purpose of this national convention is to select a presidential candidate. Of all the different things they do, the one thing they need to make sure they do is when they're there is figure out who they're going to nominate as their presidential candidate. For the Republicans, that was Donald Trump. For the Democrats, that was Hillary Clinton. In the first session, or the first few days, there are lots of speeches given. I don't know if you watched any of that on TV, but there were lots of speeches, lots of political folks giving speeches, sometimes celebrities giving speeches. After the first session is the second session. This is where the party platform is adopted. We've talked about a platform before. It's the party's basic set of ideas and beliefs. In the third session, the presidential candidate and vice president are chosen. This is where the state delegates come into play. They figure out who has the most delegates, and that person becomes the presidential candidate. During the last session, the very last thing that happens is the presidential candidate has his acceptance speech, or her acceptance speech for the Democrats. Okay, this is such an honor. Thank you for choosing me. I'll do my very best. And then usually there's balloons and confetti. After the conventions, candidates take a couple days off to rest and plan the rest of their campaign. This is an important time for them because now we knew exactly who was running against whom. Up until that convention, we were pretty sure it was Hillary versus Donald, but after the convention, we knew exactly who it was that they were running against, and that changes how they're going to campaign. They campaign all day, every day, all the way through Election Day. Even on Election Day, you'll notice that both Donald and his wife, Hillary and her husband, they will go vote early that morning. It'll be covered on the news. And then they will go out and they will campaign. Don't forget, it's Election Day. Hey, don't forget to vote for me. Hey, here's our favorite piece of information. Popular election happens, you ready? Tuesday after the first Monday in November every 4 years. This year it happens to be November 8th. We vote, and based on our popular vote, electors are chosen in every state. When we step into that voting booth today or tomorrow or on actual election day, we're not actually choosing Hillary or Donald. We're choosing electors from our state who are going to, we hope, put out our pieces of information, our beliefs. Sorry about that interruption. We've just got a few other things to talk about before we're done with these notes. Here is the electoral map for the 2012 election. This might be a little bit different than what's hanging up in my room. Notice here's California with their 55. Means they've got two senators and 53 representatives. Tennessee, 2 senators, 9 representatives. We currently have a winner-take-all system. So imagine this for a second. In Tennessee, Hillary wins, I don't know, 30% of the votes. Donald gets 70% of the votes. He's going to get all 11 of those Electoral College votes. Okay? Let's say in California, Hillary Clinton wins 51% of the vote and Donald gets 49. She won by just 2 percentage points. She's going to get all 55 of those Electoral College votes. That makes a huge difference. There are a few states, Nebraska here, that do things differently, but most states have a winner-take-all system. We'll pick up with that when we get back in class. Whether you're in first period, second period, fifth period, seventh period, we'll pick up there. Y'all have a great day. Go Dragons.